AskReddit by Dilophosaurus Milk. What thing did your family do as a kid that you later learned wasn't normal? Cook roadkill, etc. As an adult, I learned that the fun games my mom played with us were because the utilities were shut off. I remember there being a night where we had a special club with made up chants that we sung while dancing around with flashlights. My sister clued me in as an adult that the Unga Bunga Club was what my mom did when we didn't have power. It worked, because I have great memories and was oblivious to our struggles. My mum talks about the times they couldn't afford much food, couldn't afford to get us many presents and couldn't afford to take us to see Santa, so she drove us around the neighborhood looking at Christmas lights. She worries that we felt like we missed out on things. I have nothing but fond memories of my childhood. Whatever their struggles, I wasn't aware of them. We read books around the dinner table. Everyone would bring their current book and we would sit in silence reading and eating until someone had a quote or something they wanted to share or teach. I thought everyone did this and brought my books with me for a long time. This sounds incredible, to be fair. My parents woke us up at 4 AM to make them a drink. Whiskey and water on the side. I only found out this wasn't normal when I spent the night at a friend's house. I slept until 7 AM and was shocked. I asked my friend why her parents didn't wake us up at 4 AM. She said why would they do that? I said to make them a drink. Her reaction to that made me realize I didn't have a normal home life. Damn, sorry to hear. That sounds rough. It's wild that they were already awake and could make themselves one. But instead they woke you up to do it. Were they too intoxicated to make one or did they want you to serve them? I went home with a college friend my freshman year. After dinner the first night, I asked her whether her parents were always so calm or whether they were acting that way because she had company. She didn't know what I meant. What I meant was that her parents didn't yell and scream at each other at the dinner table. I thought that was normal behavior. I was 18. I'm still coming to terms with men that can actually communicate with me rather than the yelling or aggressiveness. Sad really that I've put up with that previously. My parents are into birding, and when a migratory bird or other interesting species would die in their yard, occasionally they'd put the poor thing in a Ziploc and freeze it so they could look at it later, I guess. They also had a frozen pet caiman that had died, until spring came and they could bury him in the yard. So when I grew up and my husband and I bought our first house, and an unusual woodpecker hit a window and died, I scooped it into a Ziploc and froze it, as one does. My husband was incredibly weirded out and informed me that it is not, in fact, normal to have dead wild birds in the freezer. Thank you for making me feel normal. I grew up with my family doing this also. Once when I was house sitting for a winter, I found a little dead owl and forgot it in the freezer when I left that spring. The homeowner was weirded out by it when she found it. Shit talk everyone from our friends to the rest of the family. No one was safe from caustic remarks. Mine was the same. The number of people I've had to be like sorry I was such a cunt in middle school. My family was full of bullies and assholes and I thought that's how people acted, is pretty high. Before my parents split up, nudity wasn't an issue in my house. Ever. We weren't nudists or anything. No one was watching TV or eating meals naked. But, if I wanted to talk to my dad and he was in the middle of changing out of his clothes, or if the phone rang for my mother and she was halfway dressed, they just dealt with the situation as they were. There was no wait till I'm dressed. This is actually kinda wholesome though. I think that if you see what normal bodies look like growing up, with no sexual associations or body dysmorphia connected to it, it gives you a healthier idea of what your body should look like. Even something as simple as stretch marks can be a big source of unhappiness for people, but if you saw your parents' stretch marks growing up and perceived it as normal, I think you'd be more inclined to accept it as a part of life. My mother reused leftover shake and bake. Added raw chicken or pork chops, shook it up, took out meat, wrapped up bag and put it back in the box for next time. Yikes. I don't know why we didn't have constant GI issues. That's wild. I wonder if she didn't know or was just like, oh, what are the odds? Surprised nobody got salmonella. This might be lame, but it might also be cool. The house my parents could afford was far enough from a dairy farm that we couldn't see it, but close enough that having cows in our yard was not a weird experience. We lived near some of the farmhands and they gave us the dairy's number so we could call over and report the cows. We'd regularly see men on horseback come over to get the cows. Took years before I realized seeing cows and cowboys wasn't common. This is cool. Having an alcoholic dad. I seriously thought all dads drank like mine. Also a mom with an eating disorder. I thought all moms ate like a bird. Until I was older and going to my friends' houses and seeing their moms actually eat, I thought that was so strange, cause like, why is your mom eating that whole plate, lol? My parents would knock on my door sometimes late at night and ask me what I wanted from Taco Bell. Younger me always thought it was because my parents wanted to do something nice and fun, and Taco Bell is awesome. Once I entered high school I realized my parents were stoners and they were making munchie runs. At least they included you. Leave cookies and beer for Santa. I never knew it was supposed to be cookies and milk till I was older. Also, I thought everyone's dad got in the car to drive somewhere with an open beer in his hand. We left a roast beef sandwich for Santa, as we were told that he would be tired of cookies by the time he got to our place. Oh man, my fam used to legit recycle cling wrap. Like they would wash it and hang it up to dry and use it again. Unapologetic. That is wild. And probably difficult to straighten out uncling. Super interesting. I only learned after working in a pet supply store that the game my dad used to play with my brother and me whenever we went on a family beach vacation was not for kids and was, in fact, a chuck it specifically made for dogs. As someone who just had a long day of fetch with my almost toddler yesterday, the overlap between dog and kid toys is very small. My older brothers and I started driving from Wyoming to Iowa multiple times a year when my oldest brother was 13. To have second Christmas, second Thanksgiving, etc. with my mother who moved away when I was around 10. Not normal for children to be driving themselves across the country. And no cop ever stopped us either. Okay, this might be the wildest one I've seen. My parents never got mad about grades. They were both naturally smart. My dad is actually a genius. He got a perfect score on his SATs, made it into the paper, valedictorian, and 5 scholarships, and a doctor. I, on the other hand, graduated high school with a 1.8 GPA. I got shit grades since first grade. I didn't give a fuck, and I guess they didn't either. Not once were they like, we need to discuss your grades. They looked at my report cards, and then they were like, what should we have for dinner? So funny. I hated school, and now I'm a teacher. You can love food and hate restaurants. You can love education and hate schools. Pronounce wait as YNT. Wait for me becomes variant for me. My husband had to break it to me that I have pronouncing it wrong for years. I'm currently trying to train it out of my system. And yes, my entire immediate family pronounces it that way. Is that a New England accent or something else? We used to say Vizzy instead of Fizzy, no idea why. Didn't even notice until a friend in school pointed it out. Think my mother used to think our baby talk was cute and wouldn't correct us. Which is a bit of an asshole move when your kids have to go to school and get dunked on. Dilute 1 can of Campbell's bean with bacon soup with about 3x the recommended amount of water in order to make it feed 4 people. We were not poor. I still don't get it. My mom would just decide to this sometimes, and I grew up thinking Campbell's was watery shit until like age 30 mayo. We used to have soup and grilled cheese nights where mom would mix 3 different cans of soup together. Then we'd comment on how well the combos worked. My family consists of doctors. No bodily function or oddity, be it stool consistencies or ashes or abscesses, are off limits for dinner conversation. So, on that note, has that stubborn, infected wart on your foot gotten better? Please pass the peas. My mom was an ER nurse. I completely get it lol. A drink equals pint glass filled with ice and then with liquor. Learned this is not one drink first time I tried it for myself. 110 pounds 15-year girl. Damn. I remember going into my parents' liquor cabinet when I was 15 and about the same weight. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. Neat. Because that's what I saw my parents do. I figured it'd be similar to the beer I'd tried with some friends. I was very surprised. I didn't know it wasn't normal to be your parents' translator. Everywhere my mom went, I went because in those days, easily 2000s, not everyone offered a translator. My vocab was very good for an 8-year-old. I was 9 when she got pregnant with my youngest brother and I remember going to every prenatal, WIC, and EHS appointment. So I'm well versed in English and Spanish. But fuck me, I hate being bilingual. Once teachers found out I was, they always say the new pacer kids next to me and expected me to translate for them. No one ever thought, maybe it's but right to expect this kid to worry about teaching this kid something they are also trying learning. I actually got in trouble once because the chick sitting next to me said I didn't explain some math problem to her well enough. Like fuck Yolanda, that's because I'm busy translating to you instead of focusing on how to fucking master the formula. Fuck Yolanda. Fucking snitch. My dad played a game with me where he would randomly punch me in the gut to test my reflexes. I think the reflex game was seriously not intended to hurt me, but boy did I feel unsafe around my dad, even before I learned how to prepare black tea with rum to help him wind down. I think I was 7 when I prepared my first specialty. WTF was up with your dad? Lol, my mom used to steal things from restaurants like compulsively. Nothing fancy or particularly valuable, but like sugar dispensers, flatware, a cute ceramic carafe. It would go straight into her handbag. She was always so elegantly put together, she could practically do it in front of people without them noticing. I used to think it was so daring and cool until I became an adult and realized it was sort of a pathological need. Reminds me of that episode of The Golden Girls where Sophia stole a whole place setting and Dorothy yelled at her not now MA. My dad took my brother and I to R-rated movies when we were around 7 or so. I didn't think anything of it, it was just going to a movie. Then in 5th grade, I was asked to do a movie review for the class and I picked one that was not typical viewing for 5th graders and the teacher questioned my mom on what kind of movies she was letting me watch. Oh, this triggered a weirdo memory for me. My mom is extremely prudish and would never allow us to see anything remotely sexual on TV or in movies, but our family movie nights mostly consisted of violent war movies from a very young age. Fine to see a bunch of dudes getting blown up when I was 5, but God forbid I, a woman, see a boob at 16. Both my grandpas were combat veterans, for what that's worth. Stuff the oven with pots and pans. It wasn't until I went to college and my roommate was like, why don't you just bake some frozen food, and I was like, I don't wanna go through the hassle of taking all the pots and pans out. The confusion he had on his face was when I realized